I've tested so many Thunderbolt 5 docks, but I haven't seen any that have quite as many ports as the IVANKY Fusion Dock Max 2. It's filled with ports on the front and the back of it, and this has a really cool design where the inside of the dock is actually floating around the chassis, which is nice because this does a really great job at dissipating heat. So in this video, we're going to talk about all the ports you get with the Fusion Dock Max 2, some of the really cool features, and a couple things that may either drive you crazy or be deal breakers for you. I do want to say IVANKY sent me this dock for free for purposes of making this video. I've got no input in this content. This is going to be based on my experience using this dock, the things I like about it, and the things that kind of annoyed me with the Fusion Dock. The first thing I want to go over before we go any farther is the fact that there's 2 host ports on the back of this, which is kind of confusing. And I actually thought maybe you could keep multiple devices plugged into this and use it as a KVM. In the box, you get a couple different cables, and this is part of where the confusion comes from. Namely the fact that there's this dual cable that actually has 2 ports on either side. And this is cool because it's got this magnetic design. So if you want to use this with a MacBook, you can just plug both of them in at once and they look nice. They're the perfect spacing for the Apple computers. Or if this is a problem, you can always separate them apart and go to different ports if you need to. And then they're also both labeled 1 and 2 on them. But in the box, you also get another braided Thunderbolt 5 cable, which kind of confused me because you can use this with 1 port or 2 ports, but I was running into issues when I did use it with just 1. There were just random ports that weren't working on it, and there's no labels to show you which ports correspond to which of the host ports on the back. So if you're buying this, you do need to be prepared to use 2 ports on your computer to take advantage of all the great features this has to offer. That's the first thing we got to get out of the way, and something that may be a deal breaker to you because you got to actually plug 2 cables in, or maybe you need one of those cables on the side of your computer. The Fusion Dock Max 2 is also a Thunderbolt 5 docking station, but it is backwards compatible with other devices that use Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 3, USB 4, or even some other USB-C peripherals. Just note that those devices will run at the best speeds supported by both the dock and the device. The Fusion Dock Max 2 is also engineered only as a host dock for Apple Silicon Macs. It's not compatible with Intel-based Macs, Windows laptops, or Chromebooks. This also features active thermal management, and it's got a copper alloy midframe, which is designed to spread the heat around it. And there's also a dedicated built-in fan, which ensures that the dock stays within optimal temperature ranges so your data ports don't get finicky or throttle or flicker. I found this to be very reliable, and I didn't have any issues with devices wanting to slow down or even stop working even after a long period of time. I also feel like the design of this looks really cool. I haven't seen another dock that uses a suspended design. Let's talk all the ports on this. It's kind of interesting that there's so many spread between the front and the back, which can be seen as both a benefit and also a con. So on the front of it, you get UHS 2, micro SD, and SD card slot, a power delivery out port that's going to give you higher output wattage to go to something like an iPad or a phone if you want to keep those charged, while still giving you the fast USB speeds, as well as 2 USB-C 10 gigabit a second ports. And then there's a total of 5 USB-A ports on them. And the speeds on them are all over the place depending on the ports that you use. So make sure you're being strategic with what devices you plug in. So if you need to plug fast external storage or a higher bandwidth device, put it on that 10 gig port or even the 5 gig ports. You can always use those little dongles that your keyboard and mouse use on those USB 2 ports on the front of it. That would be a great use for those. And then on the back of it, we have a lot more ports. We have another headset jack, another USB 2 port, 1 more USB 5 gigabit a second port. There's an Ethernet jack which tops out at 2.5 gigabit a second speeds. I wish this was a 10 gig port with how premium this is supposed to be. There's the 2 host ports on it, an HDMI jack, an optical out for audio, which you don't see that in many docks, so that's a cool feature. And then there's 2 more USB 10 gigabit a second ports, Kensington lock if you want to keep this locked down, and then there's the DC in for the power brick, as well as 3 additional Thunderbolt 5 downstream ports, which do support that boosted 120 gigabit a second bandwidth boost. So you can use this with up to 3 external displays if you're using a Max chip on your Mac computer. You do need to use both of those ports to take advantage of the 3 displays on this, and you need to check their compatibility chart just to see how many displays you're going to be able to handle with your computer. This does not use DisplayLink, so the processor of your computer will determine how many external displays this works with. This is the only dock I've seen for macOS that actually supports 3 external displays without using DisplayLink, and this is why you have to use the 2-port cable on it, because no Mac computer supports 3 external displays from just 1 Thunderbolt 5 port on it. In the box, IVANKY is also kind enough to give you a nice braided USB-C to HDMI cable, which is cool because you don't have to use an adapter if you want to plug it into one of those other ports on the bottom of it. And you also get a power brick in the box too. This is a 240 watt power brick. You got 140 watts of power reserved to your host device, so this is going to keep your laptop charged with no issues, even while running it with all the external peripherals. So the Fusion Dock Max 2 has tons of ports, and they're spread throughout the device, so you got a lot of options depending on what you want to keep plugged in. You just really are going to need to pay attention to the labels on it so you know the maximum bit rate that everything is able to handle. Let's talk some things I didn't like about this dock. I feel like a lot of the USB-A ports are actually on the front of it. I would like to see a few more ports on the back of it, because to me, 2 USB-A ports on the back of a dock that's designed to have as many ports as one like this is not enough. Because if you're running multiple audio interfaces or MIDI keyboards or other devices, 2 USB-A ports is just not enough to keep everything plugged in, and it's kind of clunky looking to run cables around to the front. I would really like them to reserve the ports on the front for your fast devices. Maybe even have one less Thunderbolt 5 port on the back and put it on the front if you want to keep faster USB 4 or Thunderbolt 5 SSDs plugged into it. Another thing I didn't like about this was the fact that I was so confused when I got it out of the box. I didn't realize you had to use the dual USB-C cable to take advantage of all the ports on this. And I think they could have documented it a little bit better with the quick start guide and explain that's why this is there. Maybe don't even include the single Thunderbolt 5 cable, because again, the Thunderbolt 5 cable will work and the dock will have limited functionality, but there's just no telling what will or what won't work with the dock whenever you ran that. I was just having issues with devices not getting enough power or not being recognized at all, or kind of being recognized. Once I switched to the 2 cables, everything worked fine. I was able to plug multiple Stream Decks into this, keep multiple displays plugged in at the same time, charge the computer. This works really well. It's just kind of a confusing dock. The Fusion Dock Max 2 also comes in at $450, which is pretty pricey for a Thunderbolt 5 dock. But really the reason you get this is if you want to have that multi-display functionality, because there's no other docking station right now that actually supports up to 3 external displays, all just by plugging in one dock to your computer. You could technically run additional displays into other ports on your computer and kind of run your cables sideways. This is really designed with that streamlined dual cable that you can plug both ports into the side of your MacBook Pro if you want to take advantage of the triple displays. But again, depending on your setup, make sure you check the display chart to ensure that you're going to be able to handle the resolution and the displays you want to run with it. So overall, the Fusion Dock Max 2 has so many ports, great triple display support, but this definitely comes with a few drawbacks, namely due to the fact that you're going to have to sacrifice 2 ports on your computer. You have to make sure your computer is actually compatible with this dock. And I think it's just not the cleanest looking dock in the world because there are so many USB-A ports on the front of this. I think they should have made it a little bit longer of a dock, put a couple less ports on the front, maybe take out 3 ports from the front and put 3 more of those ports on the back. That would give your desk a much more streamlined setup. Also, I think at this price point, it really needs to have 10 gigabit a second LAN port on the back of it, because you really don't want to sacrifice one of your additional Thunderbolt ports or even one of the other USB-C ports to use a dongle on that, especially when there's a LAN port already built into it. So the Fusion Dock Max 2 is for you if you got a computer that'll work with the triple displays on it, and if you need all the ports for your computer to keep so many different devices plugged in. If you're interested in buying one of these, I'll have links to buy in the description below. Ask me any questions in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think about the Fusion Dock Max 2.